All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Senior Tech Coffee. Today we have a special guest, Marie Leslie, the Small Business Simplifier, and she's here to tell us a little bit about her business as a productivity consultant, some of the things that might hang us up, or some of the things we might do that might trip ourselves up in, being an efficient business person. So anyhow, Marie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule, from family, business, the whole thing to join us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We are recording this, so this will be on the YouTube channel. And for those of you who aren't familiar with me, I'm Patrick Baker. My business is Prime of Life Tech. I provide IT tech support, training, and other technology services for the older adult community, small business providers, small businesses, and senior care providers. And as I mentioned today, we are here to talk to our guest, Marie Leslie, and her business is the Small Business Simplifier. So Marie, welcome. And I'm going to stop sharing and we can just chat.
All right.
So, excellent. Like to hear some of, I've most of the folks on this on the Zoom call here who are on the Zoom live know Marie through networking circles, and so we know a little bit about you. But I'd like to hear, and for the folks who don't know you and who watch this on the replay, a little bit about your background. Where are you from? How'd you get started in your career generally, and we'll just go from there.
Okay. Well, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 12. Had a couple of businesses as a teenager. I've been doing consulting full time for a little more than 10 years now. I started a photography business when I was in college, which would probably be my first adult grown-up business, whatever you want to call it. And also pursued a career at the same time as a freelance writer. That writing is my first love. The writing has always been a side hustle. Photography became a full-time brick and mortar business over the years, and I had studios in both California and New Mexico before I came to Colorado.
So were you doing like portrait photography or?
Portraits, weddings, and commercial work, which means like going business headshots, product photography, advertising, photography for magazines and that sort of thing. So kind of a general purpose studio.
Cool.
But the consulting part came about as my business grew, and I would have clients and associates who would come in and ask me how I did this thing or that. How do I get my business up and running? Then how do I get my business organized? How do I use the internet? Those kind of things. And so when I came here to Colorado, it was right at the end of the last big recession, and photography was changing and not nearly as profitable anymore. And I was kind of tired of working every weekend. So I decided to make the shift into consulting. It's a lot less physically demanding than wedding photography.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah. I can on multiple levels, I'm sure.
Yes.
So the Small Business Simplifier. So tell us what that is.
Well, it came about when I first made the shift from photography to consulting. I was actually standing in the business license office downtown Denver, and I had to pick a new name, and photography wasn't going to work. So on the spot, I said, I'll be Marie Leslie Media, because I was doing marketing and still photography and writing. I thought, oh, this is great. Well, as it more and more refined, that I started focusing more on helping people get their businesses up and running, getting them organized, getting them productive, I realized that the name was kind of confusing, and certainly rather vague and nebulous. So one day, and I spent a lot of time explaining to people why I did what I did with a name like that. One day a client said to me, what you really do is you cut through the clutter and you simplify entrepreneurship. And so from that came the Small Business Simplifier. And I now spend a lot less time explaining to people what it is I do.
Wow, interesting. So you just you touched on something, or your client touched on something pretty key there, simplifying entrepreneurship. I mean everybody on this call to some extent knows the, I'll just say, pain of entrepreneurship, right? I mean it's not easy, right? So how do you do that? What do you do?
Well, first is most of us did not start a business because we wanted to run a business.
Yes.
We got into business because we had something we love. And with photography, literally someone said to me, "You're really good at this. You should get paid for it." And so at 19, I was like, "Cool, I'll start a business. I'll set this up." Well, I had no idea. And I tell people, if I had a clue back then what was involved in actually running a business, I probably never would have started it. So that's one of the big things, we start with is we've all, most of us started a business and very quickly realized we're over our heads when it came to the actual running the business part.
Mm.
Record keeping and marketing and bookkeeping and the legal things and licenses and all that kind of stuff. And so that's generally where I start with people is, let's put your ducks in a row first. Do you have a business license? Do you need a business license where you are? Do you have the appropriate legal things, insurance, or those kind of things? Let's lay the foundation. And then we go from there into how to put the pieces together so that you're running the business and it's not running you.
Mm. Indeed. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had those hamster wheel moments in my business, for sure. um, so when you're starting with a new client, what's your process?
Okay. Well, the first thing is to take an overall look at the business. What is it? What are your goals for this? Why did you start this business? That a lot of times by itself will inform the direction we need to go in. What do you hope to get out of having the business? And then we get into what works and what doesn't work. What is making you absolutely crazy, or you can't figure out, or you're completely missing? Sometimes if I'm working with somebody who hasn't launched their business yet, we'll look at things like, how long is it going to take you to get going? Are you going to start as a side hustle, or do you have enough cash reserves to support yourself for the first year while you get it up and running? And that really is, if you're going to quit your job and start a business, you really should have enough to at least pay the bills for the first year, or be fortunate enough to have someone else who has a job and is paying those bills. And then it's, what do I need to start out organized? And once we've kind of gotten through that stuff, then we talk about how people work. There is no one size fits all organizing solution. No matter what anybody tells you, if you buy this set of containers or you buy this app or whatever, isn't necessarily going to solve your problems if that's not the way you work. And so that's one of the things we look at. If I can, I'll come and look at their actual physical workspace, whether it's, online and they walk around with a camera, or in there in person. It tells me a lot about the organizing style. Are you, do you like your space all clean? Like, I can't stand things all over my desk. And that makes it really interesting because I share office space with someone who does. And so I had to arrange the desk so I don't have to look at that one, because it makes me crazy. But it's, are you a paper person? Are you digital? What's going to work for you? That's kind of the biggest thing that we start with.
Interesting. So do you work with folks who have existing businesses, who've been in business for a while, or do you work with folks who are startups, exclusively one or the other?
No,
I guess.
I work with both, but most of the people I work with actually have already started a business because they've started the business and then suddenly gone, what did I do? What was I thinking here?
They need help.
So yeah, help me, please. So that's usually where I come in. Every once in a while, I'll get somebody who hasn't actually started yet, and then we can, kind of work on getting it started. But most of the time it's, I'm stuck and I can't figure out why. And I'll come in at that point and kind of, help them rescue themselves.
Interesting. So yeah, so you mostly get the folks who have, wanted to strike out on their own. They basically went through the pain of making all their own mistakes, and which everybody needs to do, right? In one form or to one degree or another, and then you kind of help them either pick up the pieces or find the pieces, and then put it all back together. Sounds like. So, I mean, not that it's like a disaster when they come to you all the time necessarily, but anyway, well, I just like, it's always interesting for me talking with folks, especially, I would call it process oriented people. It's always interesting for me, as someone who is kind of also a process oriented person, to sort of peek under the hood and see how do you do things, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Maybe that's a good next question. What works for you and what doesn't work for you when you're not only in your dealings with your clients, but even just in your own business? What can you put your finger on a thing or a couple of things where it's like, oh yeah, this is a pattern where, I do this and it works consistently, or this is a pattern where if I do this, it's a disaster every time. And maybe that's too extreme, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. For me, I mean, one of the first things is I am a live and die by the calendar person.
Okay.
It doesn't mean my calendar's rigid, but if I have the important stuff on the calendar and I have blocked out time for that, that always makes my week more productive. In fact, I have a couple of time periods each week that I block out, and they're called CEO time. And it's time for me to do creative work in my business. I don't do the bookkeeping during that time. I don't schedule social media during that time. It's not for emails. It's for either developing new systems, researching new apps. I get a lot of emails of the recommend my app to people, recommend my website to people. And it's the time when I can look at those and analyze those and can I work this into my business, whatever. And having that time and really having it set aside as untouchable time. I don't schedule meetings during that time. Occasionally, if something comes up, like I'm going to appear on somebody's podcast next week and the available time was in the middle of CEO time. Well, I'm not going to turn down a podcast appearance. So, I shifted that time to a different, but I still have those blocks of time every week. That helps. And then also administrative time. When I do the bookkeeping and I do schedule social media or those kind of things, I've learned that scheduling anything I can schedule means I'm free for other things because I'm not thinking, oh, I need to go do this, I need to go do that. And that helps a lot.
Are you pretty disciplined with your time management that way?
For the most part. The last, like we chatted about earlier, the last couple of months have been a real test when a whole lot of family things came up and I found myself doing a lot of major rearranging. But the beauty of it was because I had scheduled and I work a lot of things in advance. For example, I have multiple websites and those are usually scheduled 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time. So when I have to take a week off and drive to the Port of Los Angeles to deliver a car for a child who moved across the country, there was no blip in my business. Nobody could tell that I was not sitting in front of my desk churning out content or solving people's problems because it was all scheduled out. And that
Interesting.
helps.
Interesting. So for you personally, how sensitive is your squirrel trigger? where squirrel,
Oh, yes.
where you get distracted and, and you're like completely off the rails in terms of what your plan was for the hour, the day, the half day, whatever,
Oh, I definitely have a squirrel trigger. And I've learned to kind of work that into my day. I get a certain amount of time for distraction. One of the things, I'm very visual, which probably obvious from being a photographer, but I have a whiteboard that sits above. I have two big giant monitors on my desk. Once you've made that leap, you'll never go back to the little laptop if you don't have to. But it makes it easy for me to see what I'm doing. And
you can
I'm one of
spread
those
it
people who
out.
can have 92 tabs open and which one is playing music. But I have a whiteboard above my monitors, and I use sticky notes on there to track my priority projects. And so it kind of helps me not get as distracted, because as soon as I look at it, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that right now. But yeah, I definitely work some squirrel time.
Nice. So it sounds like you made yourself a Kanban board above your desk there. So,
Yeah.
and if you're not familiar with that, Kanban is it comes from Japan, but it's essentially a management practice that's used in agile software development. So, you know, you can Google that one if you're not familiar with it. Anyway, well, that's so how much pushback do you get from your clients who are maybe not as disciplined, shall we say, as you? When you're trying to introduce some of these systems, how much pushback do you get? How much modification do you have to make to your, shall we say, stock processes?
It depends. Change is hard. Let's face it, we are creatures of habit. And I spend a lot of time with some of my clients reminding them that things are going to get messier before they get tidier. It's the nature of change, whether you're organizing your business or you're organizing, your house. You pull all the stuff out of the closet and all of a sudden you have giant piles everywhere. And you think, what was I thinking? This was a bad idea. And that usually keeps us from making changes. But it's the same in business. When we take apart the systems that aren't working, it can be really messy. And sometimes that's hard, and we have to go very slowly. And sometimes the changes are very incremental. We'll change this. And once they've figured that out and that they're surviving that change, and oh, that was actually good, then we can move on to the next one, and it snowballs. And after a while, it comes a little quicker. But for some people, it's a very slow process.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely visualize that kind of resistance. But I can also visualize the kind of positive reinforcement you get when you see something that you're doing different is also working. So,
yes.
so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, whether it's freeing up your time, or when you can, especially when you can see the results in your bank account. That's probably
Yes.
the biggest incentives, when all of a sudden the business is working better and the bank account's getting bigger because you changed this thing or that thing. That helps a lot.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's definitely some positive reinforcement. So I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit to tools.
Sure.
I mean, you talked about things like, like for example, that you're you're pretty much calendar driven in terms of blocking out your time, and you do certain things at certain times and that sort of thing. But you also implied as well, when we were talking about how, because you plan things out in advance, you're able to go halfway across the country, and as far as your clients are concerned, you're still parked in front of your computer. My guess is there's some tools involved that made that possible.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
so talk about that for a second.
Well, one of the biggest ones And probably one of the first discoveries that I made to make my business life easier was Google Voice. And whether you use Google Voice or some other, VoIP software. Back when I had the photography studio, for a while I had two cell phones, one for my business and one for me, and that's just kind of a real pain in the tail. It's also expensive.
Right.
Google Voice is a freebie. I can have it call my computer, which I don't do anymore. Now it just routes through my cell phone. But I have the ability to turn it on and off.
Right.
For example, right now in a meeting, I can put it on do not disturb and calls will go straight to my voicemail. Or when it's after hours, or when I go on vacation and I don't want my phone to ring all day long, I can put it on do not disturb. I can put on a vacation message, and I can check messages at my convenience. And one of the cool things it does is it transcribes your messages.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you know how much quicker it is to, and sometimes they come out a little weird, and then I have to go listen to it and go, what was that?
Yeah. Did they really say that? Yeah.
Yeah. Who is this again? But to be able to quickly glance through and be able to say, oh, that's a call I need to return, or
Mhm.
that's car warranty land, we'll just mark that as spam. But that one, and it's free, and so it's very useful. So that's helpful. Obviously, using a calendar. I do have a planner book at my desk because I find the act of writing reinforces your brain. There's some scientific research on that. But I also have Google Calendar. And one of the things I like about it is I have a personal calendar there and a business calendar. So I can, see exactly what's going on. And I can share calendars with family members. So it's not so important now that my kids are all grown, but when they were all in school and I was running a business, I could see where they had to be, and we could all coordinate schedules.
Right.
And it also, it gives my husband a degree of security because I go out and meet with people that I don't know or he doesn't know, and he can look at my calendar. If I were to not come home, he could see who I met with last, and start searching there.
Right.
But you
Indeed.
can also put tasks on there, which is nice. And so I have some weekly recurring tasks that show up that I don't have to think about because it just says, okay, it's time to go do this now. So that's
And the beauty of using something like the Google tools set like that is that, it's device independent. So you can be on your computer, your smartphone, your tablet, whatever. You can somebody else's computer, and you can look at your stuff if you need to. Yeah.
I can access it from anywhere. So that's
Right.
really, that's part of the beauty of it. If I'm out somewhere and, oh, did I have an appointment? I can, check my phone and know where I should
Right.
be, or whatever it is.
Right. Which is pretty handy.
And of
Yeah.
course, it's all free. Pretty much.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. The free
Starting
part.
out anyway.
Yeah. The free part is that you're willing to sacrifice some of your privacy in exchange for using Google's services. So that's the trade-off. So, but that's a whole other thing, whole other show.
Yes.
Anyway.
We get into the security on another day. But
Indeed.
for the most part, yeah, it works. And you can upgrade and do different things, but it starts out free. And so, the point of entry, and it's simple to use. For most people, it's pretty easy to get started with.
Right. And it's also platform independent, which is pretty handy.
Whether you're running, a Mac or Windows or even, I think Linux, it works. So you're okay.
Yes.
And then along with that is a scheduler. If you have a business where you you have meetings or appointments, consultations, having an online scheduler, you go to my website and you can click a button and you can make a meeting with me, and we don't have to exchange 25 emails to figure out when we're available. There's several. I use one called Calendar Hero, which used to be called Zoom AI, and it has nothing to do with actually Zoom. But they're Acuity, Calendly, Appointment are all programs that do that. They all start out free, and then they have additional features if you want to pay. But I don't know anybody who's tried one who has not been an instant convert to my life just got easier
Mhm.
in meeting new clients or scheduling meetings.
How much, how much, I won't say resistance, but how much do people, generally speaking, not use it? You know what I mean? How many people still gravitate towards the old back and forth emails or just calling you up and nailing you down in that moment for a time and that sort of thing? I mean, how often do you see that sort of thing, do you think?
Oh, maybe 1 out of 20 people.
That's good.
So
That's
yeah,
really good.
I think people have very quickly realized that it made their life easier too.
Mhm.
We didn't have to, like I said, we don't play in the past, it might take 3 or 4 days to figure out a meeting time, because
Right.
one of the things I do is I do not sit with my email open all day. I only check my email unless I know someone is sending me something. I only check my email about 3 times a day. Because I don't work in a business where it's, I need help right this very minute. If it's something like that my existing clients, their website goes down or whatever, they need emergency help, they'll message me and I'll get that right away.
Gotcha. Hi, Karita, who's just joining us. Welcome. We are recording, which you should be aware of, so you can watch the replay on YouTube later today if you like. So anyway, thanks for joining. Anyhow, what would you say? I mean, we talked about some pretty essential tools, but is there any, besides things like the real go-tos like your calendar, your task list, and so forth, are there any things that you must have, that you personally must have, or that when you see a certain need within your client base, that you're like, oh, you got to have this tool or this set of tools?
I have a couple. One
Sure.
of them is Bitwarden. It's a password manager.
Yes.
I looked it up one day. I have approximately 320 something passwords. And in addition to that, I have clients' passwords where I need to maybe log into their website or their social media or whatever it is. That's a lot. My brain.
I can guarantee you there's no way you remember all those passwords,
No,
even if they were the same password.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
In the beginning, you had all these really lousy because you had to remember them. I have an IT security person who a few years ago freaked out over some of my passwords. And so at that point, we went through a couple of different password managers and we settled on Bitwarden. One, it starts out free, it has paid and free, but you can share it with 2 people. So I can have my account and my husband has an account, and we have folders where we can share, the passwords, like to pay bills and all that stuff. But I can also have separate folders that no one else can see that have my client passwords in them and that sort of thing. So now all of my passwords are 12 to 16 characters. And the only passwords that I have to remember are the one to log on my computer, the one to get into Bitwarden, and there's maybe 2 or 3 sites that I use all the time that I have been able to remember those passwords for. But I don't have to think about it, and I have it on my phone and I have it on my computer, so I can access wherever I am. I don't have to deal with maybe a spreadsheet or writing passwords in a notebook, which I did many years ago. I had a little notebook that was in my desk, and now I think about that, I think anybody could have walked in my office and picked that up and accessed it.
Or you could have lost it while you were traveling, and then you would have, that would have been a nightmare.
Yes. So that's that one is definitely an essential.
Agreed.
Another one is Backblaze. Backblaze is an automatic data backup system. I have my computer and I have about 4 or 5 terabytes of storage. on my desk because photos take up a lot of space.
Oh yeah.
But it's automatic. I don't have to think about it. It's about $60 a year. And I've had a lot of balk at that. Share a quick story. I went to Maui a few years ago. We were there for about 2 weeks, and I took something in the neighborhood of 3,000 pictures.
Wow. I believe it. Yeah.
Came home from Maui, downloaded them all, and I use Photoshop and RAW and all that. So it's a time-consuming process. Converted them all into an editable format and went to bed. And the next morning I got up and my hard drive was dead. Uncoverably dead. It was at the time, a 1 terabyte hard drive. So not only did it have all those pictures from Maui, but it had tens of thousands of image files. And it was dead. And, after I recovered from the little mini heart attack, I called up Backblaze and went online and did the thing and downloaded and went and bought a new hard drive, plugged it in, went into Backblaze and downloaded everything. They now do a thing where they'll just send you a drive. It's like $50.
Wow.
They send you the drive, you download it, you send it back, they give you back your $50. I did not lose a single file.
That's amazing.
So
that's cool. So they send you like a USB hard drive with basically your full backup.
Everything on it, and you can restore. You can also do like individual. And I was like, oh, who needs that? Well, then one day I couldn't find a file, and I don't know what happened to it, but I was able to go into my Backblaze account and find the file and download it to my computer. So that one, especially if you run a business, it's critical for both your sanity and your business and your having lived through many, many hard drive crashes. This is so much easier than burning backup CDs or backup DVDs or whatever. And I do also have a very large server in my basement. I think it's 60 terabytes now.
Wow.
It has it's a media server. It has.
Sure.
I didn't set it up
for all your photos.
Yeah,
because you've got a gazillion photos. Yeah,
it has all of our movies and all of our music has been digitized, and so my kids can all log in from wherever they are and watch their movies. So, and it is set up to back up my computer, but Backblaze is still easier, and it's in the same place as I am. So if something were to happen, house fire or whatever, I still have my stuff on Backblaze. So those two are really critical programs for me for keeping things. The other one that I use for a lot of clients that is generally temporary is called Rescue Time, and it's excellent. I don't know if you're familiar with it. If you think you're not getting anything done all day, you feel like you work all day and you're not getting anywhere, you put this program on and it will tell you exactly what you're doing all day long. And it not only shows you where you are on the line, but it will show you how much time you're spending in, say, Microsoft Word or Excel or Photoshop or any of that.
Okay, so it sounds like the Apple and I think Google even introduced tools. Screen time is what they call it on the Apple products, where it's pretty much you get a weekly report that tells you, you spent this much time on Facebook, you spent this much time working on productivity things. And how it differentiates is a little weird to me. How does that program differentiate? Or is it just literally record? Sorry, go ahead.
Tell it what is productive. It shows you the apps, and you can say, for example, when I was a marketing manager for a company for a while, and we put it on everybody's computer, it was on mine. Everybody else in the company, for example, Facebook and LinkedIn, were considered unproductive time. On my computer, they were considered productive time because I was, talking with clients and prospects. But so you can tell it what's productive, unproductive, and neutral. So, and so it'll give you the option of, I think it has some defaults. Social media probably is by default unproductive. But it gives you, the biggest thing is it gives you an idea of I spent how many hours a day on Facebook? Because we don't realize, we think, oh, you just hopped here and you hopped there, and then all of a sudden you get to the end of the week and it's 25 hours of Twitter or TikTok, and you're like, oh, well, that explains why I haven't gotten anything done this week. So that one's kind of nice, and you know, it's again free and paid versions, but it's a really easy way, an objective way to figure out where is my time really going when I sit down at the computer, because it is easy to get sucked into those black holes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm afraid. Yeah. Well, I'm almost afraid to look at my screen time report some weeks. It's just because I just know, you know, this hasn't been a good week. What about on the now? Most of the things that you just talked about, but especially like, for example, like Bitwarden, that has a mobile option, so you can use it both on desktop and mobile devices. Are there other mobile apps that that you recommend for folks who might be more, you know, like out and about type of thing, spend more of their time away from their computers than not?
Yeah. A lot of the like a social media schedulers have mobile apps, and at least for business stuff, to be able to, you know, go in quickly. I might take a picture of something when I'm out and I want to put it on my Instagram, or I want to put it on, you know, Facebook or whatever, but I don't want to do it right that minute. It's nice to have that scheduler. The other reason is because if I don't go into the app itself, if I don't go into Facebook or I don't go into Instagram, there's no danger of me getting sucked in. And so that's why I like to use a scheduler when I'm out and on my phone, even if I'm going to schedule it for 5 minutes from now, because I won't be distracted by, oh, look at that. Oh, and one more. And I mean, you know, the infinite scroll. So those are really helpful.
Right.
If you have, and I don't personally do this because formatting and things are important to me, but you can set up, if you have, for example, WordPress, and you're running your website on WordPress, you can actually make posts from your phone. So those people who travel without a computer, and still want to keep up with their website, you can do that on your phone. Those are kind of, you know, some of the big ones. And of course, mail apps and that sort of thing. I use Google Docs on my phone. Supposedly I could put Microsoft Word on there, but I'm like, if I'm going to be doing some writing, and I do sometimes, especially when we're on the road, I can, you know, if we're making a road trip somewhere and I'm not the driver, I can sit and type notes or whatever on my phone. One of the programs that I use a lot that's mobile, it's called Easy Voice Recorder Pro. And I can just dictate to myself. There's another one, and I can't remember what it's called right now. That's a voice to text. And when I would do solo road trips, I would rough draft blog posts by speaking them into my phone, and it would, you know, and like the Google transcription, it's sometimes comes out a little weird, but at least I would have that. And so those are both helpful. Any kind of where you can make notes to yourself. I think Google Keep does it now. Voice assistant, if you have that. I think Siri will do it for you on an iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, so I don't know as many of those apps. But things like that, where you can make a quick message to yourself, is definitely helpful for keeping up with things. You know, because I'm one of those people, I'm out and about and I'll see something and think, oh, blog post. And the biggest lie we tell ourselves is, I don't need to write it down. I'll remember. And then we wake up at 3 a.m. going, what was that I was thinking about?
Yeah.
So those are a couple of really helpful ones for me.
Yeah, having the handheld computer and the ability to not only you know, do things like check my email, check my schedule, but also, as you said, even the built-in voice transcription that's built into like the G board, the Google keyboard that's comes on your Android phone.
Yeah.
That's actually really good in terms of its accuracy. And the one that's the transcription built into the Apple keyboard on Apple devices is actually pretty good too, for the most part. I mean, but yeah, if you're driving or if you're even the passenger and you just want to, keep tabs on things because you're on a road trip and that's just how you roll as a passenger, you can still keep an eye on things and look around and talk on your phone and do your writing that way. So yeah, it's really I'm pretty happy that that's available.
Yeah.
So we're kind of winding down here at the end of our hour, and I wanted to just ask one more question and then just kind of open it up generally for questions. And so, do you have any what do you see in the future as far as the Small Business Simplifier? What's on your roadmap for the future?
Well, I'm going to be doing some more writing. I'm working on, producing an ebook or two on organizing, productivity, those kind of things for your business. Starting to do a lot more podcast appearances. Joyce has been inspirational that way. So far I haven't had to do a lot. I've just gotten people who've asked me, but I'm kind of working on more of those. And maybe, kind of putting together that roadmap for the new solopreneur who wants to start a business. I have a lot of materials from over the years of doing that. And so I kind of started sorting it out and can I make a startup kit? I like checklists and, to-do lists and those. And so I've kind of also been putting those together so that maybe we can have some, kind of a DIY. Here's some step-by-step how to do those things. And so looking at a lot of that, I'm doing a lot more short-term coaching and consulting now, which is, basically come in, clean up, get people on the right track and keep going, as opposed to very long-term sorts of things.
Cool. You just triggered another question though.
Okay.
So list making apps. What are your favorites?
I used Google Keep and Voice Assistant. My son set me up last year with how to do the grocery list. Because I would do it and it would never, then I could never find it when I got to the store. So he set me up for that one. Because I'm like, I know there's a list in here somewhere. So, that's kind of one of mine. I do use PowerPoint to make some of my lists, and Publisher. And that kind of makes me an outlier. I know that's not a really super popular program, but I acquired it years and years ago when there weren't any really good alternatives. Use that. The Google Docs, Google Forms, that one, is easy to make lists in there too. So
cool. I would add one to your list of apps to check out. It's called Workflowy.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of that one.
So
that's kind of
that's kind of a fun one
I love
to work with.
lists.
All right. Well, yeah, lists are great. Lists are essential from my perspective. Anyhow, I want to just open the floor up. If folks have questions, just chime right in or unmute or raise your hand or whatever you like. Joyce, I saw your hand. Go ahead.
I had a couple questions. First, I thought of this earlier, and you just a few minutes said you're doing more short-term coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So two things then. How many sessions is that? How do you charge then? What's your fee structure?
Okay. It could be anywhere, depending on what somebody needs, anywhere from about 1 to maybe 6 months. Most people are somewhere in the 2 to 3 months, and you can either do it, you're going to have a one-off meeting, which usually ends up turning into some kind of coaching, because I can't usually get your business set up in one meeting. And so we do have packages where it makes it less expensive than calling me every 2 weeks and saying, can you come over and help me? So we do that. So kind of some packages put together with that. And
what would be, it's okay to ask your pricing structure, what is a package cost?
generally, it's anywhere from, involves either 2 or 4 visits in a, 2 or 4 meetings in a month. It would start with, say, that 2, because that's kind of the preference for most people. It gives them a couple of weeks to start implementing those things. A package like that with some email access and resource materials and that sort of thing is generally a 3-month package. Like that might be somewhere between $600 and $800.
That's very reasonable, actually, compared to other, that's helpful. And also you said the word legal things, which is very vague. What is,
Yeah.
like, can you elaborate a minute on what you meant by that?
Yeah,
No,
this stems.
Sorry, just to clarify, Joyce, you mean legal things as far as getting your business established?
Well,
Is that right?
that's kind of where I was going. She had this list. She had record keeping, that I get. Bookkeeping, I get that. Marketing, I get that. Legal things.
Yeah, it's kind of having people look at, and this comes from way back when I was a photographer, and I would have people come to me and want to start a photography business, and they would say, "Oh, I don't need a business license. I don't need a sales tax permit." Well, when I first started, and I'd been in business for a few years, the first thing I did, I started in California, and in California, it's called the State Board of Equalization, was to go get my sales tax permit from the state of California. And I'd been in a business for a few years, and I met a man from my church one day, and we were just chatting, and he said, "You have a business?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I don't mean to be really rude." He said, "But do you have a resale permit from the Board of Equalization?" And I said, "Yes." "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I'm an auditor." He said, "And just so you know, and this I have found to be true in every state, if we think you're running a business and you are not reporting and remitting your sales tax, we will shut you down first, and then we will investigate your business. And it won't be pretty, and it won't be cheap." And so, out of that, it came as if I'm starting people to run a business. I want them to know, you're running a business or you're not. Is this a hobby or a business? If you're running a business, you need to have a business license if your locality requires that, and you need to have the appropriate legal documents. I don't give legal advice, but I know a lot of attorneys, and I will, say, "Do you know how to set up your business? Go talk to this person, or go talk to this person, or visit." In Colorado, I give people links to the sites that explain what you have to do to start a business and have it be legal. That's kind of a big thing for me. I'm very, most of you know, big on the ethics and the rules. Do it and do it right. I don't want anybody to come back to me later and say, "You never told me that I needed to do these things, and I didn't know," because there's a lot of things we don't even know to ask about.
Right.
So that's one of my things is to ask you the questions you don't know you need to ask.
Okay.
What's an example of one of those questions?
That would be the first one. What kind of structure should my business have? Am I a sole
Like
proprietor,
LLC or something like
LLC,
that.
or corporation? And I can't answer that question for you, but most people do start out as sole proprietors, just because it's easy.
Right.
Or one of them is, bank accounts. Do I need a business bank account? Or do I at least need a separate bank account for my business money? And the answer there is a resounding yes. Keep the money separate. Life is easier. So those are some of them. There's somewhere I have a whole list of questions
Cool.
that I ask people that they don't know, that they never realized they should have asked when they started a business.
Thank you. And one more thing, I know I'm kind of dummy, but just last thing is CRM. Maybe I did step away to get coffee, but when you were talking about what's absolutely essential, I did not have a CRM for a few years.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff got lost between the cracks. And then when I finally got my Pipe Drive, which is my preferred one, PIPEDRIVE, I found that was just perfect. I feel like Goldilocks, $12 a month. Syncs. That's when I finally got in Google Calendar. You know my whole story, Marie. So for me, that was life-changing, frankly.
Yes.
That and Calendly, those two
As you-
things.
Yeah, as you gain
Yeah.
customers, I've seen people do it in Excel or there's a Microsoft program that's made for that kind of stuff, but it's very awkward. Access. I don't even think they make
Access,
it
that's right.
Access was what it was, but those all tend to be very awkward. So having a CRM, and whether you have a CRM or you're in the beginning just using a mail list manager, and that's critical too. If you are going to send out any kind of newsletter or regular correspondence to your clients, you must have an email manager. Like
And by that, you mean like Constant Contact, MailChimp,
yeah,
something like
MailChimp,
that?
Constant Contact. I currently use MailerLite and Birdsen. I have a client who we go the rounds on this, and at least once a year, he fairly regularly has 1,500 people on his list, and decides that he wants to just send a personal email out, and has been shut down from his Gmail account probably on average twice a year. They will put a block on it because he's sending out excessive emails. It is a violation of the CAN-SPAM Act to do that.
Wow.
And they can permanently shut you down. And that means you don't even get to download the list of people in your email, your contacts. So yeah, it's definitely one, probably the easiest one to start with is MailChimp because it's free in the beginning. But there's a lot of other ones. MailChimp can get expensive really, really quickly once your list starts growing. So it's worth doing some research to figure out which one works the best for you.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack for sure.
Karita has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. Okay, so my question is, how do you, I don't know if you guys cover this, how do you get your business not to be a side hustle? Like, I'm still in that in-between stage where it still feels like a side hustle. I got some of the business pieces, but it feels like a side hustle. How do you make that next transition to actually grow your business? And I'm in the business where I have to actually touch product. Like I'm a mobile tech, so I have to touch the thing. It's not like I can be away and just make residual income.
Part of it is time. Over time, I started, like I said, I started photography in college, and it was a side hustle business for probably the first 10 years. And part of it was a giant leap of faith. Part of it was having enough time I had put enough systems in so that when I did make that transition, that was really still before the digital age for the most part. That was in the film days, but having systems, even back in my paper days, I had systems in place. I just finally let go of my last file cabinet, which is kind of a weird thing after all these years. Part of it is time. Part of it is figuring out the systems that will give you more time to focus on growing the business. And that's the beauty of putting organized systems into place. When that stuff kind of becomes automatic, just not necessarily automated, because it isn't always automated, but when it becomes automatic, it frees up your time to focus on what you need to do to grow that business and bring in more income. And part of that is learning, I guess, is marketing strategy. And that's something that I also work with my clients on is, the strategies and the systems that you can put in place to market a business. Is a strength because back in the day, I had no money to spend on marketing and learned how to do it on the cheap. And so there are kind of lots of things you can do there without spending lots of money, but it's kind of a function of being organized and those few years of hard sacrifice to get it growing. And then it'll snowball eventually.
Nice. Great question. All right. I am going to wrap it up here for us. Just a couple of things. Is it showing my slide? Are you seeing the small
Yes.
business simplifier slide? Good.
Yes.
Sometimes Zoom just randomly throws something up on my screen. I'm like, what are you guys seeing right now? Anyway, so again, Marie's and the Small Business Simplifier, thank you so much for joining us today. Here's Marie's contact information if you would like to get a hold of her and get some more information from her about her services. And again, Marie, really great content today. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Really, really appreciate that. And if you if you did just join us, this will be available on YouTube later today. The next Senior Tech Coffee is coming up at the beginning of November. My guest is going to be Marlo Vernon, and her product is called Care Penguin. And essentially it is an Internet of Things type product that is useful for knowing that mom or dad is okay if they're still living in their own home. It's essentially a monitor that attaches to the hot water pipe. And it lets you know that, yep, at 7 a.m. this morning, dad was at the kitchen sink and he, put hot water in his tea kettle to make his coffee or whatever, that type of thing. But basically it's part of this whole new generation of what's known as age tech, to help, basically keep track of our elders and to know that they are okay, but not in an invasive way. So anyhow, that's coming up in November. My information, if you need some technical support assistance with your all your technology, computers, smartphones, tablets, etc., smart home technology, this is how you get a hold of me. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate everyone taking the time to be a part of this today. I'm just going to look at the chat to make sure there were no questions. Oh, it's all thank you, thank you. And Marie, thank you so much again. Everyone else, thank you for joining us today. And we'll see you next time.
All have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, folks.
Adios.